Dino Crisis 2 goes in a completely different direction. Capcom built this one around movement and momentum. Everything's a lot faster and just really built to keep you pushing forward. You're plowing through herds of dinosaurs with machine guns and racking up combos and chasing points like an arcade shooter. Every kill feeds into the next one, and that loop gets addictive pretty fast. The whole experience runs on energy and a constant rush that never really slows down at any point in the game. So what was Dino Crisis 2? Dino Crisis 2 came out in 2000, right at the end of the PlayStation's life. Capcom had already turned Resident Evil into a household name, and that first Dino Crisis was a massive hit the year just before. The team behind it had proven that they could take the same engine and make something new with dinosaurs instead of just zombies. It worked, and by this point, Capcom was starting to shift. They were juggling a lot of projects at once. More Resident Evil sequels, early ideas that would end up being Onimusha, and smaller experiments trying to figure out what came next for horror. Dino Crisis 2 came out of that period of transition. Hiroyuki Kobayashi took over as producer, and from the start, the goal was to make something completely different from the first game. They didn't want another slow, methodical survival experience. They wanted something fast, something that had momentum. The team used pre-rendered backgrounds again, like the old Resident Evil games, but this time it was for a reason. It let them pack the screen with dinosaurs and build scenes that felt busy and alive. More creatures meant more chaos, and the hardware couldn't handle that in real-time environments. Kobayashi said in an interview that it wasn't enough to just have dinosaurs to shoot. They needed to make it fun, so they built everything around scoring and flow, the combo system, the quick kill chains, and the shot between levels. All of that came from the idea of giving players a reward for aggression instead of caution. It's an interesting design shift because it was still a time when survival horror was built on scarcity and fear, but Capcom wanted to see what happened when you flipped that focus toward action. The later PS1 years were also when Capcom started pushing the limits of what horror could look like on the console. You can see pieces of that thinking in Onimusha's prototype stage, and later in the experiments that would lead to Resident Evil 4. Dino Crisis 2 sits right in the middle of that timeline. It's not part of that main line of survival horror anymore, but you can tell it was made by the same people that was chasing that next big thing. The project moved quickly also. The team already had a working engine and pipeline from the first game, so they could focus on changing how it played. They added faster weapons, short mission bursts, and areas that encouraged constant movement, instead of tension building through quiet moments. The intensity came from just never stopping. You keep moving in this game, keep fighting, keep collecting points until you're in another safe room. That direction says a lot about where Capcom was as a studio in 2000. They weren't afraid to experiment, and Dino Crisis 2 was the perfect space to do it. If it worked, they'd have a new formula. If it didn't, it wouldn't hurt their biggest franchises. You can feel the freedom in that design. The confidence of a studio willing to test ideas before locking them into something as massive as Resident Evil. But looking back, it's a pretty clear snapshot of Capcom evolving. The company had mastered the slow burn of survival horror, and now they were testing how far they could stretch it without losing the identity. Dino Crisis 2 became that experiment, a bridge between eras. The game keeps the fixed camera angles from the first game, but they're doing something different with it now. They're not there to build tension, they're there to frame action so you can see more happening at once. The camera swings wide sometimes when the dinosaurs rush in, and it always shows you just enough to stay focused on the fight. Like I had mentioned, the team went back to pre-rendered backgrounds because the setup let them load more enemies on screen. It's the only way the PlayStation could handle that pace that they wanted. Kobayashi said that the idea was to make the act of fighting fun, where in the first game, when you fought a dinosaur, it was more of a reaction, something you had to do to survive. This one builds everything around the excitement of constant engagement. Every design choice supports that loop too. The moment you start the first mission, you're scoring kills, collecting extinction points, and spinning them between levels. Those points are the backbone of the game. They control your upgrades, your ammo, your weapons, even how safe you feel when the next wave hits. The loop feeds itself. The faster and cleaner you fight, the more points you earn. If you take a hit or break your chain, you get less points and it hurts your score. So every encounter becomes a short challenge to move through an area without getting touched. You start thinking in bursts of motion, which dinosaur to shoot at first, which one to drop, when should you swap weapons, when to move before getting surrounded. Every screen becomes a small arena, where efficiency matters more than being scared. That's where the momentum starts to take hold. You clear a section, see that score pop up, and you immediately want to do it better next time. It's the kind of system that keeps you replaying areas even though you don't have to. When you make it through a room without getting hit and you see that bonus stack up, it feels good in a way survival horror never tried to do. It turns precision into reward. And then the shop between missions is another part of that rhythm. You spend your points on stronger weapons, raising ammo capacity, or upgrades. But the balance is always tight enough that you have to think about what matters most. Do you grab the next gun or save up for a real upgrade later? The structure gives you constant feedback. Fight better, earn more, build faster. It's a loop that never really breaks, and it fits the pace of the game perfectly.
I've checked the stats on all the residents and soldiers, but I couldn't find any profile fitting her description. It's like she doesn't exist.
The camera and the level layout work together to keep that energy going. Most areas are big wide open spaces or long jungle paths, where enemies can pour in from any direction. The static shots keep that cinematic, but they also give the game a sense of flow. You're running through each screen in seconds, and every time the camera cuts to a new one, it feels like moving to the next stage in an arcade shooter. It's fast enough that you stop thinking about tension entirely. You're in a rhythm with the game now. React, fire, move, and repeat. The story sits in the background while the gameplay takes over in this one. The focus in this one is more on speed and reflex, opposed to fear and atmosphere like the first game. It's a shift from surviving dinosaurs to mastering them, and that's what really brings this game to life. Hey everyone, real quick, if you've made it this far, thanks for hanging out with me for a few minutes. And I hope you all are enjoying the video. And if you are, consider dropping a sub. I'm getting super close to 6K. Might actually be over that by the time this video goes up. But that still just blows me away. Around 9 months ago, I said the same thing, super excited over 300 subs. Now the channel gets that every few days. It's insane. But I really appreciate it. And if you're watching on mobile, hit the hype button. It actually helps the video grow directly by telling YouTube, hey, this video's good, show it to more people. It's only active for the first week of the video's life though, so if you're catching this a bit later, a normal like is still good. And let me know in the comments, did you like Dino Crisis 2? Did the faster pacing and tone shift work for you? Or did you miss the feel of the first game? I'd love to hear your thoughts. But let's get back to Dino Crisis 2, and how the tone and atmosphere is a lot different from the first game also.
Attention, missile destroyed. Warning, warhead armed. Evacuate immediately.
So the game just drops you into a world that really shouldn't exist. A whole city, research facility, military team, they're pulled through time and dropped 65 million years away. It's one of those setups that sounds crazy, but it ends up creating something pretty memorable. The world feels like two timelines smashed together. There's steel and concrete buildings buried in the jungle, generators and computers still running under layers of vines, and pieces of human civilization just scattered across a place that doesn't want it there. The first game mostly took place in labs and like office rooms. This one opens everything up. You're running through rivers, cliffs, overgrown roads, the camera pans wide, showing you space to move and where more dinosaurs can flood in. Now, I touched on it before that Capcom had tried to build a jungle before, but the original game engine just couldn't handle it. So they had to go back to the pre-rendered backgrounds to let them finally do it right. And the art team researched how light cuts through trees and how dense canopies change the look on the ground. You can tell they wanted the jungle to really feel alive. Something that felt like it was swallowing you. That's what gives this game its edge. Everywhere you go, you see the remains of a human attempt to control nature. Metal walkways collapsing into rivers, tanks half sunken in mud, bases meant for science and control now covered in moss and bones. It's a mix of science fiction and natural destruction, and it fits the tone really well for this game. The Time Gate disaster gives the setting a strange sense of displacement. You're looking at a place that doesn't belong anywhere, a city that's been erased from its own timeline, full of people who vanished without a trace. And the more you explore, the more it feels like humanity's mistake is on display. Everything that was built to study the dinosaurs ends up feeding them. The labs become feeding grounds, and the roads are just hunting paths now. And the tone hits somewhere between pulp adventure and apocalypse. You've got the military gear and the high-tech weapons, but they're being used in this wild prehistoric world where none of it really matters. It has the movie serial energy, Lost Expedition, Hostile Planet, laser guns. But under all that, there's still a sense that things have gone too far. Every bit of tech you see is broken or bleeding into the landscape. Even the music kind of leans into that energy, switching between fast, heroic tracks and deep percussion that really fits the jungle tone. What's interesting is how the game keeps layering that contrast visually without needing to spell it out. On one screen, you'll be in a bright clearing full of movement, and next you'll be walking through an underwater base. It's trying to show you how small human creation looks when the world decides to take it back. It's beautiful in a way. To me, I really enjoy that scenery, that nature taking back what humans built. I've always thought that was just gorgeous. Everything about the design supports the tone also. The level transitions are fast. You move from dense jungles to military bases to a city that's completely swallowed by plants. It all feels connected, like you're running through the aftermath of an experiment that tore a hole in time. Every space tells that same story. The humans arrived, they tried to study it, and then they got erased by it. And by the time you reach the second half of the game, the underwater facility and the city ruins, the message is clear. The world doesn't care how advanced you are. The dinosaurs don't care about your mission or your tech. They're the natural order here. You're just a temporary visitor in their world, and every encounter reminds you of that. That's what makes this setting so strong. It's a world built on conflict between eras, nature and technology fighting over the same ground. You can feel that tension throughout the entire game. And then the underwater facility. It hits me in a completely different way from the rest of the game. For me, this is the spot that actually scares me a little bit. I have thalassophobia, so being dropped in this underwater lab with the lights just barely cutting through the water, it's a whole different kind of tension. The game suddenly feels heavy, everything slows down in your head. You put on a diving suit and you drop into that water, and the tone shifts immediately. You're suspended in this dark place where the world just feels massive and endless. The visibility drops a lot, the sound gets muffled. There's mosasauruses down there, and even if the game isn't trying to scare you in the traditional sense, the idea of something that size drifting out of the dark, it terrifies me.
Energy reactor has been damaged. The third energy reactor has been damaged. Switching to emergency power. Areas will be blocked to prevent explosions.
It's the only part of Dino Crisis 2 where I felt small and not powerful. What makes it stick is how the environment sells that feeling. You're in a research wing that's been sitting underwater for years. The rooms are bent out of shape, the lights are flickering. Everything that was once strong and neat was softened and warped by water. It's a lab that isn't a lab anymore. It's a drowned relic. And the gameplay changes too. The suit gives you movement options, but they don't make you feel any stronger or more powerful. They just help you stay alive while you're trying to get through a place that you shouldn't have been in to begin with. The needle gun fires a lot slower, the boost jumps, they feel awkward. You get aqua grenades to shoot that can break some weak points. And each time you do it, the noise just shakes the whole world. The pacing here completely shifts. It's not momentum like it's been throughout the whole game, it's intrusion. You're entering a part of the world that's already made up its mind about you. This level works because it feels like the pure version of Dino Crisis 2's theme. Human structure lost to nature, only here nature isn't just a jungle or pack of raptors, it's water swallowing everything and turning a whole section of the facility into something alien. Even if the rest of the game is all about action, this one area reminds you how fragile every human is when the environment decides to take over. Out of both games, this is the only place that actually scared me. There's just a fear that comes with not knowing what's below you, or down the hallway a little bit where it gets dark. Just that bit in the water that starts to fade out of your vision, and what's moving in that dark, or how deep or far everything even goes. It's the one moment in Dino Crisis 2 where the world feels like it could just swallow you completely. There are some things that this game loses that I feel pulls away from the Dino Crisis experience from what you'd expect coming from the first game. The first one moves in a slow, deliberate way. Each hallway and area feels super dangerous. Every room feels like something you have to think your way through. You're watching your resources, mixing items, planning routes, solving DDK door puzzles, and you have to pay attention to the bleeding system because one mistake can put you in a bad spot for the next fight. All that creates a steady kind of tension. Dino Crisis 2 looks at those systems and takes a different approach. A lot of the things that shape the experience in the first game disappear or get pushed so far into the background that they really don't matter. And that changes the feel of the series in a pretty big way. One of the first noticeable changes is the mixing system. In the first game, mixing is a full mechanic. You're combining darts, healing items, enhancers, and you really feel the difference every time you use one. It's a really slow process that makes you think about what you'll need later. But in this one, the sequel, that system is completely gone. You pick up items and use them as they are. There's no movement where you stop and weigh your options. The game never asks you to plan ahead in the same way. It just keeps you moving forward. And puzzles follow that same pattern. The first game throws a lot at you, and a lot of difficult ones. The DDK codes, the key cards, the electrical panels, timing puzzles, they force you to slow down. You have to read files and check room layouts, and look really closely at the environment. Dino Crisis 2, puzzles don't really show up, and if they do, it's just here and there. But they're really fast. Most of them are just like hit a switch or open a gate, move forward. You're not solving anything that makes you stop and think more than a few seconds. The game is built to just keep you on your feet. Ammo and item management get the biggest overhaul. In the first game, the bullets really matter. Every dinosaur you shoot, it feels like a decision. By the end, you remember the rooms you had to avoid because they drained too many resources. In Dino Crisis 2, you refill ammo constantly, and the game expects you to unload constantly. Weapons feel more like tools for clearing the next group rather than lifelines. You're buying gear with points and upgrading everything as you go. So the whole stress of running out of that just isn't there anymore. It becomes part of the reward loop instead of something you're worried about. The bleeding mechanic is a good example of how much the tone shifts. In the first game, bleeding is dangerous. You start losing health and you feel the pressure immediately. You need a hemostat or you're in trouble. In Dino Crisis 2, the bleeding still exists, but it barely changes how you play. You can buy upgrades so it just never happens, and even with that, it doesn't shape your decisions. It was a pretty big deal in the first game, and now it's just a detail. All of this adds up to a completely different rhythm. The first game makes you move with caution. The second one pushes you into a flow state. You're clearing rooms, chaining points, and sprinting through areas without stopping. The systems that once made you slow down just aren't there anymore. Instead, the game rewards motion. It wants you to fight more, kill faster, and keep building momentum. It turns the experience into something that feels closer to an arcade shooter than a survival horror game. You're not studying the map, you're not worrying about whether you should fire your last few bullets. You're focused on keeping your combo alive and just hitting the next upgrade. That kind of design creates a different tone. It's louder and looser and a lot more reactive. The trade-off is that the tension from the first game just fades out. You lose that sense of working through a dangerous facility where one mistake can just sink your entire progress. You lose the slower moments where the world feels hostile, kind of in a quiet way. What you get instead is speed, action, and a loop that sucks you in and just keeps pulling you forward. None of this feels like an accident. It reads like Capcom using Dino Crisis 2 as a space to experiment. They had just come off a wave of survival horror titles. Resident Evil was still godly massive, and Onimusha was being prototyped. They were figuring out what else the PS1 could do before the next generation arrived. Shifting Dino Crisis into full action gave them room to try things the bigger franchises just couldn't risk. If it flopped, the mainline series was untouched, and if it worked, they had new ideas to bring forward. And even though the sequel removes a lot of what defined the first game, you can see how it happened. The developers aren't trying to repeat themselves, they're trying to make something that felt exciting the entire time you were playing it.
Let's go.
Right.
What it ends up doing is carving the series into two very different identities, one built on tension and planning and the other built on movement and impact. And depending on what you liked about the first game, that shift either feels refreshing or like something important slipped away.
Dude, even if we get the data, how do we get back to our time? The activator for the gate has been destroyed, right?
So for the story, the game brings Regina back, and that alone gives the sequel a familiar anchor. She's the one thing tying this world of time displacement and dinosaur swarms to the slower, more grounded tone of the first game. She feels experienced now, she talks less, she keeps her focus sharp, and moves like someone who's already lived through a nightmare like this, and walked out with the training to handle anything else that comes her way. But the story doesn't follow her as the main point of view this time. It shifts towards Dylan Morton. He's a member of the Trat unit sent to clean up the mess left behind after the Time Gate accident. Regina's the veteran, but Dylan is the one who gets most of the screen time. His role sets the tone of everything the game tries to be. He's not running through this alone. He's a soldier dropped into a mission that already went wrong, and he's expected to push through it.
Weapon definitely suits a Trat member, but I prefer to go in this way. See ya, Mr. Barbarian.
Dylan's backstory explains the way he carries himself. He grew up around trouble, bounced between rough groups, and eventually found direction in the military. He doesn't talk about it much, but you can see it in how he reacts to situations. He keeps moving, he doesn't rattle easily. He trusts the gear on his back and the people beside him. It's a different approach from Regina's tension-driven mindset in the first game. She's studied danger. Dylan moves through it like he's dealt with violence before. And the mission they get is simple at first. A whole city, research facility, and military team vanished when the experiment went wrong. Regina and Dylan are sent in to recover survivors and gather data on what happened. It starts as a standard operation. You see signs of the people who were there. You follow trails through broken labs and overgrown streets. Every area looks like it was abandoned in a hurry. But the scale's a lot bigger. It isn't a small building with a handful of scientists like the first game. It's this entire zone filled with the remains of an entire community.
Trespasser confirmed. This room will be locked.
Throughout the game, Regina and Dylan grow into a steady partnership. They move with purpose, they share information, and they help each other through sections of the mission. The game never really pushes a dramatic bond though, but you can feel a working trust between them. And that shift from isolation to cooperation really mirrors the faster tone of the sequel. The world in this one feels a lot more active and just full of movement. They aren't hiding and checking corners every few steps, they're clearing zones, advancing through areas, and following a plan. The survivors that they're looking for, they're not just scattered researchers, they're people who have been living in a time period that hasn't matched their own for a long time. The mission slowly becomes more than a retrieval job. You see signs of their struggles, broken equipment, failed attempts to rebuild, and messages left behind during the final days. Pieces of their story show how quickly everything fell apart once the dinosaurs took the area back. And then a twist hits. Dylan meets Paula, a girl surviving inside the area. She can't talk at first, but she understands what's happening around her. And the more Dylan interacts with her, the more you get the sense that she's important to the place. It isn't until a lot later in the game that the truth lands. Paula is Dylan's daughter from another timeline. The Time Gate accident scattered more than buildings, it reshaped entire lives. Dylan is looking at someone who exists because the timeline broke. It's one of the strongest moments in the story, because it doesn't rely on a big emotional breakdown. It lands because the game lets the reveal sit with you. Dylan accepts the information immediately. He protects her and he keeps the mission moving. Regina understands what it means immediately, even if she doesn't say much. The world they're in is unstable, and Dylan's connection to Paula makes the instability feel personal. The final stretch of the story pushes the theme of that even further. The team learned the Time Gate is creating fractures, and the only way out is to destroy the facility generating the distortions. Dylan stays behind with Paula to secure the escape while Regina tries to argue, but Dylan stands firm. His last moments with Paula, they feel quiet, like he's trying to memorize her face.
To our original time, use the data to learn about third energy, then build a perfect gate and come pick us up for the last time.
Dylan. I will. I promise.
Final warning. 10 seconds.
The story ends with Regina stepping back into their timeline. It's a surprisingly heavy ending for a game built around non-stop action. What makes the narrative work so well is how closely it follows the shift in the gameplay. The story isn't a slow unraveling of a mystery like the first game. It's a mission that just keeps accelerating. Regina and Dylan move through the world like trained operatives. They're prepared and focused this time. The tension comes from the scale of the disaster and the weight of the timeline falling apart, not from being trapped in small rooms with limited resources. Dino Crisis 2 tells its story through movement and teamwork and escalation. It focuses on characters who meet danger with forward momentum. Every area you clear, every survivor you learn about, every clue you pick up for the timeline, it all reflects the sequel's tone. The fear from the first game isn't gone, it's just shaped into something that pushes the character to act instead of hide. And by the time it ends, you're left with a story that feels bigger than the mission you started. Regina walks out and Dylan kinda just fades away out of the timeline to keep them alive. The world she escapes from stays behind her, buried in another era. The story doesn't tie everything up neatly, but it gives meaning to the push through all that action. It turns the power-driven gameplay into something that still has emotional weight. This game leaves a strange mark on the industry. It came out during a time when Capcom was shifting its focus, even if that shift wasn't clear yet. People who played it back then remember it as something fun and fast with a style that stood out from everything else on the PlayStation. It didn't shake the genre the way Resident Evil did, but it made an impression. The game reviewed well, it sold over 1 million copies, and it found an audience that didn't mind the sudden push into action. It wasn't a niche title, it was a real hit on the PS1. Critics picked up on what Capcom was trying to do. They liked the faster combat, the punchy weapons, the new energy the game carried. A few reviewers even said the return to pre-rendered backgrounds helped more than anyone expected because it made the action cleaner and more readable. The studio had tried to build a jungle in the first game, but the hardware just couldn't keep up. Dino Crisis 2 shows what they were really aiming for. That presentation made the movement snappier, the encounters smoother, and the world more stylized. It felt like Capcom finally knew what to do with dinosaurs. Even with the strong reviews and good sales, Dino Crisis as a series never found one clear direction. The first game leaned into slow tension, the second game was all speed. The following project turned into a light gun shooter, and then Dino Crisis 3 jumped into straight sci-fi. That did not do well at all. Every entry moved into a new direction, and fans never got a chance to settle into what the series was supposed to be. Resident Evil bounced between tones too, but it never lost its identity. Dino Crisis changed its personality every time, and that made it harder for the series to grow into anything stable. The interesting part is how much Dino Crisis 2 lines up with where Capcom was heading. A lot of ideas in this game show up again in other series. Devil May Cry started as an early Resident Evil 4 prototype and evolved into a combo-driven action game, full of movement and upgrades and score chasing. Onimusha leaned into action-heavy samurai combat right after the PS2 launched. And a few years later, Resident Evil 4 landed and changed nearly everything about gaming in general. The tight aiming, the quick decision-making, the momentum, the forward pressure, sections that reward aggressive play and confidence. It feels like Dino Crisis 2 was an early test of that new energy, even if it wasn't meant to be. The scoring system, the combo chain, the weapon shop, the idea of clearing rooms fast enough to grab bonuses. All that shows up again in later Capcom projects. It's the same hunger for high-tempo combat, but RPG-like upgrades and replay hooks. The difference is that those later games had stronger worlds attached to them. Devil May Cry had personality, Onimusha had myth and history. Resident Evil 4 had a full reinvention behind it. Dino Crisis 2 had Regina and Dylan and dinosaurs, and the tone didn't always match the name printed on the box. It played well and it felt great, but the identity drifted too far from the foundation Capcom started with. The market timing didn't help either. In 2000, people weren't used to arcade-style action campaigns built around score chasing. That kind of design would explode later, but Dino Crisis 2 landed right before that shift. It didn't fit cleanly beside survival horror, but it also didn't match the action games that defined the early PS2 years. It occupied this middle lane where it was easy to enjoy but harder to categorize. People had fun with it, but then moved on to bigger names that came with stronger direction. When Capcom started seeing success from Devil May Cry and then watched Resident Evil 4 blow up, it made more sense for them to follow through on those brands. Dino Crisis didn't fail, but it didn't offer a clear future either. The last main entry struggled, the spin-offs didn't build much momentum, and the studio had other projects that were just growing faster. They let the series fade out, even though fans never stopped asking for it. Modern re-releases, trademark renewals, and fan polls keep bringing the series back into conversation, which shows how much people still care about these games. The IP isn't forgotten, it's just sitting on a shelf waiting for the right moment. Looking back, Dino Crisis 2 feels like a mutation that came from the right minds but landed in the wrong moment. It's confident in what it wants to be, and it focuses on speed, replay value, and combat flow. It has personality even when the story takes wild turns. It isn't afraid to throw away older ideas to try something new. It's the kind of experiment that tells you a studio is itching to break out of old habits. When you look at what Capcom did a few years later, you can see how much this game predicted that evolution. Even if the series never fully returned, Dino Crisis 2 still left fingerprints behind. The momentum-driven encounters, the upgrade loops, the score system, the pace. These ideas moved forward into other franchises that ended up defining entire genres. The Dino Crisis name didn't survive, but the design philosophy did. That's the impact this game had. It gave Capcom room to try something fast and aggressive before they brought that style to bigger titles. Dino Crisis 2 feels like a window into the moment where Capcom stopped thinking only about slow horror and started thinking about action as a skillful experience. It's a strange part of the company's history, and it deserves to be remembered for more than just its dinosaurs. It showed a side of Capcom that was ready to evolve. And even if the series never made it past that point, the ideas did. The game stands out as a snapshot of a studio in transition, reaching forward while still carrying the shape of what came before it. If you've made it all the way to the end, thank you. I really appreciate y'all hanging out with me for a little bit and spending time in this world again with me. We're getting super close to 6K now, we're just a few away. It's still crazy to say that out loud. Just a few months back I was excited for 300, and now the channel pulls out almost every couple days. And it's always because of you guys showing up and watching these long videos all the way through. A like really helps a ton too, and for the mobile viewers, you can hit that hype button during the first 7 days of the videos live. That button really does help, and it tells YouTube more people should watch this. After the first week though, the hype button goes away, so a regular like and comment still helps a lot. But in the comments, let me know what your experience with Dino Crisis 2 was. Did you grow up with it, or did you come to it later? Did you like it or hate it? I'd love to know. But before I end this one, I want to leave y'all with a core memory I had from this game. There was a local rental shop in my town. I never knew its real name, and I still don't. The owner's name was Terry, so I always just called it Terry. But every weekend I'd tell my dad, I want to go to Terry's. And we went there one day and I saw dinosaurs on a cover of a case, and that's all it took. We grabbed it, went back to the house that I lived in at the time, and started it. The first cutscene started playing and my dad said, "Holy crap, that looks like real life." I still remember the way he said it. It gives you a window into how good we thought graphics were back then. Every year we'd think, okay, this is it. It can't get better than this. And every year they found a way to push it further. I look at where things are now, and it's hard to think about where games will be 10 years from now. It's really crazy to think about.
If we don't go now, we'll never get back.
So thank you again for watching and hanging out with me. As always, I'll see y'all later.